Hello everyone, hello and welcome to another Object Talk Live. Wonderful. Good afternoon and welcome to another Object Talk Live. My name is Shireen and I am a learning officer at the Jewish Museum London. And I am going to be presenting today's Object Talk. Now, as always with our Object Talks, this Object Talk is linked to the museum's theme of the week. And this week's theme is all to do with words, the power of words. Now, after doing some research, I realized that I could not mention the power of the words of wordsmith, author, novelist, playwright, and poet Israel Zangwill, known for his influential and transformative words. At the Jewish Museum London, we have over 40,000 objects, many of which highlight Israel Zangwill's words, be that through his plays, protests, and poetry. And today, I would like to share with you a few of the objects that share light on Zangwill's life and words. So what I'll do right now is I will share my screen and we will begin. Wonderful. Now, the first object I would like to look at today is this flyer. This flyer is an East London Jewish Communal League flyer. And it alone tells us so much about what we need to know about the author, novelist, and wordsmith, Israel Zangwill. Let's take a closer look. Now let's focus on East London Jewish Communal League. That is very important. For Israel Zangwill was a proud Jewish East Ender, proud of both of his East London identity, but also his identity as a Jewish man. Much of that identity informed his career as a novelist and much more. He even coined himself as a Cockney Jew, proud. Now, when we go down the flyer, we see his name in bold, Israel Zangwill, and a portrait to the right. Now, Israel Zangwill was the son of Father Moses Zangwill, who had migrated to the East End from Latvia and married his wife, Miss Ellen Hannah Mark Zangwill, who had migrated from Poland. We see underneath his name, it says the popular novelist, and indeed he was. Popular for many works, fiction and non-fiction, including Children of the Ghettos and many more. We see that he would hold this lecture on November the 25th, 1896. Now, Israel Zangwill was indeed a 19th century man and was born in 1864, I should say, and therefore was 32 during this lecture. And as we can see, the subject of this lecture would be the ghetto. Zangwill dedicated much of his life to exploring and sharing the Jewish experience. The Jewish experience in Eastern European countries, the Jewish experience of the ghetto, but importantly, the Jewish experience of Ashkenazi migrants in the East End of London, the Jewish East Enders. Now let's take a closer look at some of the words that Israel Zangwill wrote, starting with one of the most popular novels, The Children of the Ghetto. Now, The Children of the Ghetto was a really popular novel written by Israel Zangwill. It was the text that made him a literary celebrity, really, across the nation, and coined him the Dickens of the ghetto. His personal experience as a Jewish East Ender, as well as his family's roots in Poland and Latvia, largely informed his work. Written in 1892, the novel not only tells us about the living and economic situations of Jewish people in Victoria, London, but also paints a picture of Israel Zangwill's life. Subjects of charity, diaspora, and integration, feature heavily throughout the text. It tells the story of the Ansel family, consisting of father Moses, older sister Esther, as well as 5 younger children. It is through their eyes that we gauge a real understanding of what life was like for Jewish migrants in London in the Victorian period. This novel was so popular that in 1899, it was dramatized and brought to Broadway, to the Royal Adelphi Theatre in the West End, a large theatre that hosts many shows to this day. This production was directed by James Ahern and starred Blanche Bates, Ada Dwyer, and Wilton Lakai. But this was not the only novel turned play that Zangwill wrote. Let's take a closer look at more. Now, I appreciate this is not the best quality, but we just had to mention The Melting Pot, arguably one of his most well-known pieces of work. This was another popular production and hit sensation, not only in England, but in America too. This play depicted the life of a Jewish immigrant family, a family which looked forward to a society free of ethnic division and hatred, rather than backwards at the traumatic past of pogroms. The play was first performed in New York in 1909 and helped establish Zangwill's literary reputation in America. But most importantly, arguably, this play coined a really important term, the term the melting pot. In his script, Zangwill writes, "America is God's crucible, the great melting pot where all the races of Europe are melting and reforming." This term, the melting pot, is a term that's continued used in both colloquial language, but also in migration studies to this day. Highlighting themes of multiculturalism, diversity, and migration, this play is more relevant than ever to this day. In 2006, it received a production at New York's Metropolitan Playhouse. And 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, in December 2017, it was performed at the Finborough Theatre in London for the first time since 1938. But Israel's words transcend beyond theatre and novels. Israel was also a passionate activist. He was a keen activist against anti-Semitism and assimilation, and fought tirelessly for suffrage issues. His wife, Edith, was an ardent supporter of women's suffrage and helped form the Jewish League for Women's Suffrage. Following their marriage, Israel Zangwill began to make passionate speeches, write essays on the suffrage movement, and write articles in support. He was one of the most prominent male speakers of the cause, and in 1912, he was elected vice president of the Men's League for Women's Suffrage. This photograph depicts Zangwill at a women's suffrage meeting, and we could see him right here. Zangwill's participation in the suffrage movement was significant in the process towards women's suffrage in the early 20th century, and integral to the large body of his life and work. Though his writings on the suffrage movement didn't include his own Jewish identity, his Jewish identity did allow him to bring these conversations into Jewish spaces. Now, although Zangwill's words traveled far and wide and impacted many across the globe, encouraging them to fight for unheard voices, his words also had great impact at home, as a husband, but also as a father to 3 children. Edith and Israel Zangwill were the parents of 2 sons, including Oliver Zangwill, who to this day is known as a leading psychologist, and daughter, Peggy. We have many articles in our collection that shed light on the powerful words used within their household, the words of love and comfort. But this poem here is what I wanted to share with you today. A poem that shows Israel's love for his daughter. A poem that shows his role as a father. A poem that perhaps is more familiar, more homely. And I'd like to share a few of the words. Peggy, his daughter, is my snowdrop. Peggy is my dear. Peggy, like the springtime that comes but once a year, she's just as sweet as honey. She's twice as good as gold. And let me whisper in your ear, she's only 4 years old. The poem goes on and on and on, and ends, Peggy is my primrose. Peggy is my fae. Peggy's like the woodlands in the month of May. She brought back the sunshine. Did we have to scold? Peggy's stolen all our hearts, and she's only 4 years old. I love this poem because it shows the power of his words to impact and touch and move people in his realm, in his home, but also beyond. It shows how he acknowledges his words of love, but also words of power and impact. And to end this object talk, I'd like to quote a professor, Professor Marie Jane Rockelson, who says this: Zangwill remains insistently a fascinating, controversial figure in literary and Jewish studies, who will not disappear and whose fiction still has the power to provoke strong feeling and thought. And he definitely continues to provoke strong feeling and thought at the Jewish Museum London and far, far beyond. I hope it provoked you today. Thank you so very much for listening. And please do tune in for our next object talk, which is in fact tomorrow, as it is National Intern Day. And we will be having our wonderful intern, Hannah, share another object with you. But for now, thank you all very much and have a wonderful day.